Mark Prior emerged as one of the top prospects in baseball at the turn of the century, and was at the top of the helm as the Cubs appeared they had the team to break the curse. But unlucky injuries and overuse led Prior to a fate experienced by many pitchers and ended his career very early. So let's look back at his career and how things turned wrong.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Mark Prior grew up in San Diego from a family with an athletic background. He attended the University of San Diego High School and had the privilege to work with Tom House on his mechanics during his sophomore year. Tom House is a former Major League pitcher who became the Rangers pitching coach in the 80s, and his work gave him the distinction of being called the father of modern pitching mechanics. He even went on to work with a number of NFL quarterbacks ranging from Tom Brady to quarterbacks who lost in the playoffs to Tom Brady. And during his time with the Rangers, he worked with a pitcher named Nolan Ryan, who Ryan credits with extending his career. So House is a pretty good mentor, and went a long way in Prior being labeled as someone who has perfect mechanics, and mechanics comparable to Nolan Ryan and Roger Clemens. His talent led him to being selected in the first round of the 1998 draft by the Yankees with an offer for a $1.5 million signing bonus. But after both parties were unable to come to an agreement on contract negotiations, Prior decided to go to college. He spent 1 year at Vanderbilt, compiling a 4.59 ERA, then decided to transfer to USC the following year. He posted a 3.56 ERA in his sophomore year as USC made the College World Series. Then his junior year in 2001 would be historic. In 138.2 innings, he struck out 202 with a 1.69 ERA and .85 whip while posting a record of 15-1 as USC made the College World Series again. His performance won the Golden Spikes Award along with the Dick Howser Trophy and Rotary Smith Award. And as a result, Prior was selected second overall by the Cubs in 2001, behind new first-ballot Hall of Famer Joe Mauer. And the decision to go to college paid off when he signed the largest signing bonus in history at the time at $10.5 million. To start 2002, Prior made 6 starts in AA West Tennessee, then he was moved up to AAA Iowa, where he made 3 starts, and his 2.29 ERA and 79 strikeouts in 51 innings in Double and AAA gave him the call to the majors at the age of 21. He made his debut on May 22nd at Wrigley Field against the Pirates, where he pitched 6 innings, giving up 2 earned runs and striking out 10. A great start in front of 40,000, with the pressure of the top prospect label being attached to him. His next 2 months saw a couple rough starts, but he began to settle in as the season moved on, posting a 3.9 ERA in June and July with a 10.9 K per 9 rate. And his first start in August would be a sign of things to come. In a start at home against the Rockies, it would be his best game of the year, throwing a complete game with 1 earned run and 13 strikeouts. And in that game, he threw 136 pitches, even saying that he was surprised when he was sent out for the 9th. And this wouldn't be the last time there would be surprise as Prior went out for an additional inning. Prior made 5 more starts that year, only giving up more than 2 earned runs in one of those starts. And that 5th start, which was made against the Cardinals on August 31st, would be his last of the season. He was removed after 5 innings because of a strained left hamstring, and due to the injury, the Cubs announced they were shutting him down for the year. He finished the year with a 3.32 ERA and 116.2 innings with a career-high 11.3 K per 9 rate. It was a stellar rookie year that earned him a 7th place finish in Rookie of the Year voting. And while his rookie year was good, 2003 would be by far and away his peak year. He threw his first complete game shutout in his second start with 12 strikeouts against the Expos, and by the end of April, he had another complete game, this one against the Pirates, and that hot start continued through the first half. He finished the first half with a 2.69 ERA in 124 innings with a 10.5 K per 9 rate. His performance gave him an all-star selection along with his teammate Kerry Wood. The two were arguably the best 1-2 punch in the game at the time, and it appeared it would stay that way even with the injury problems Wood was facing. And for Prior, in his start 4 days before the All-Star break, he sustained his first arm injury in the majors. It wasn't a result of throwing, but rather a collision with Marcus Giles while running the bases. The injury put him on the DL with shoulder stiffness for 3 weeks. He made his return on August 5th against the Padres, and while he was great in the first half, he was even better to finish the year. In 11 starts, he pitched 82.2 innings with a 1.52 ERA while striking out 95 batters, and winning 10 of those games. Both him and Kerry Wood's performance went a long way in the Cubs winning the division. Prior finished that year with a 2.43 ERA and 211.1 innings while leading the league in FIP and WAR, and only Kerry Wood had more strikeouts than him. But both Prior and Wood's usage during this time led to a lot of criticism. Prior only threw 79 pitches in his return start, and that was his last start with less than 100 pitches, and it really amped up during September. He threw at least 131 pitches in 3 of his 6 starts, and averaged 126 pitches in those starts. This led to criticism of Dusty Baker over Prior's usage that led the league with 113 pitches per game in his 30 starts. But Pryor and Wood's volume was huge in the Cubs making the playoffs, and it wasn't going to stop. Pryor's first playoff start was great, as he threw a complete game, giving up 1 run and striking out 7 to best Greg Maddux as the Cubs won 3-1 to give them a 2-1 series lead over the Braves, and that ended up being huge as the Cubs won the series 3-2. After that 133-pitch game, his next start came in Game 2 of the NLCS against the Marlins, and he had another great start, pitching 7 innings, giving up 2 earned runs with 5 strikeouts as the Cubs won 12-3 to tie the series at 1. The Cubs would win the next 2 to gain a 3-1 lead, but would lose Game 5 to take things back to Wrigley, and Game 6 would be the game that changed Pryor's career and the Cubs franchise in years to come. Pryor was cruising to start the most important game of his career, giving up no runs for the first 7 innings, while striking out 6 and allowing 3 hits. The Cubs scored their 3rd run in the bottom of the 7th, then Pryor induced a flyout to start the top half of the 8th, and Cubs fans had to be ecstatic at this point. Winning this game seemed like a sure thing, and no matter how the World Series ended up, at least they snapped a long pennant drought, and with Wood and Pryor, the future looked great. But then, things took a turn for the worst. Juan Pierre had a double in the next at-bat, then on the 8th pitch of the at-bat, Luis Castillo hit a foul ball down the left field line, and that's when the infamous Steve Bartman incident occurred. Pryor then walked Castillo, leading to a mound meeting, but no substitution. Then on the 3rd pitch of the at-bat, the eventual MVP of the series, Ivan Rodriguez, hit a hanging curve to left to drive in a run. Then on the 1st pitch of the next at-bat, a rookie named Miguel hit a hard grounder to short that Alex Gonzalez bobbled that could have been an inning-ending double play, and is often forgotten in all of this. And genuine criticism can be directed to Dusty Baker at this point. Leaving a young pitcher in this situation without even a mound visit was terrible, and it's easy to say that, as Derek Lee hit a double on the 1st pitch of the at-bat to tie the game. Pryor was finally taken out too late, then the Marlins added 5 more runs that inning to tie the series, then they won Game 7 the next night. An absolute crushing blow to the team that obviously took a toll on Pryor's mental ability, and the usage from the season was seen right away to start 2004. Pryor missed the first 2 months of the season due to an Achilles tendon injury and elbow soreness. He had a great first start on June 4th, striking out 8, giving up no runs in 6 innings against the Pirates. But as the season went on, it was clear that Pryor wasn't the same. After a poor performance against the Padres on August 10th, where he gave up 7 earned runs and lasted just 3 innings, his ERA was over 5. It was obvious to everyone and even opposing players how different he was. Ramon Hernandez on the Padres said after that game, "When I faced Pryor for the first time in my life, he was throwing 96-97. Today, he was throwing 91-94, and he was a little wild and out of the zone. He was hurt for a long time. It might take a little bit of time for him to be the Pryor that everyone has seen. He did manage to settle down after this, lowering his ERA to 4 by the end of the season, and saving his best for last by striking out 16 with 1 earned run in the final game of the season against the Reds. And while that gave hope to fans that he would return to where he was, injuries came back to bite him again in 2005. It wasn't as serious as the injuries sustained prior to the 2004 season, but elbow inflammation delayed his first start of the year by a few weeks. And he looked great in his first few starts, striking out 22 with a .95 ERA in 19 innings in the month of April. And aside from a start in May against the future NL champion Astros, he had another solid month, finishing May with a 2.93 ERA in 58.1 innings while recording a 9.6 K/9 rate. But that last start in May brought another unfortunate injury. In the 4th inning, Brad Hawpe hit a 117-mile-per-hour comebacker right at Pryor's right elbow. The second time, Pryor got hurt in a very unlucky way. This resulting in a compression fracture that put him on the DL for a month. But he returned and pitched 6 no-run innings against the White Sox at the end of June and was able to finish the season, posting a 3.67 ERA in 166.2 innings while striking out 188, which gave him a 9th place finish despite the time missed with the injury, and gave him the lead in K/9 at 10.2. And despite a strong year, there were rumors of a trade involving Pryor, especially as Nomar Garciaparra left the team, but that never came to be. And with Pryor still on the Cubs roster, for the 3rd straight year, he started the year on the DL, worse than what he dealt with in 2005. This time he was dealing with a strained right shoulder that caused him to miss the first 2 months of the season. His first start came on June 18th, and it was one of the worst of his career. He gave up 7 runs on 7 hits, with 4 of those being home runs, as he couldn't make it out of the 4th inning. And unfortunately, it didn't get much better. By his 4th start on the 4th of July, he lowered his ERA almost 10 points to 7.71, while walking 4 in each of the last 2 starts. And 10 days later, he was back on the DL with another rather freak injury, as he strained his oblique during batting practice. He would return on July 21st in another game where he couldn't last past the 4th, though he only gave up 4 earned runs this time. Pryor would rebound in his next start, pitching 5.2 innings of scoreless ball, but he would only make 3 more starts before he went on the DL again. In his start against the Brewers on August 10th, Pryor was throwing noticeably slower and was taken out after just 3 innings, where he walked 4 and gave up 5 earned runs. He was then placed on the DL with tendinitis, and this caused him to miss the rest of the season. Pryor had by far his worst year in the majors when he pitched just 9 games with a 7.21 ERA in 43.2 innings, while having the worst K per 9 and FIP of his career by far. And it's easy to say this was the worst year of his major league career because of the results and the fact that this would be his last major league season. The Cubs avoided arbitration by signing Pryor to a 1-year $3.8 million contract. Pryor competed with Wade Miller for the 5th spot in the rotation, but lost and was sent to the minors to begin the year. He made 1 minor league start and afterwards received exploratory surgery on his right shoulder that shows structural damage. He received surgery and missed the entire 2007 season, and in the offseason, he was non-tendered by the Cubs, ending his time with them. And over the next 6 years, Pryor would have stints with a number of teams that resulted in unsuccessful returns to the majors. After signing with the Padres the same month he was released by the Cubs, he needed another surgery in May of 2008 that resulted in him being released by the Padres the next year. He then spent time in an independent league and the Rangers AAA team for 1 inning in 2010. Then he signed a minor league contract with the Yankees that saw another injury. Then he signed a minor league contract with the Red Sox in 2012 that eventually saw him released to make room for prospects. Then in 2013, he signed a minor league contract with the Reds, where he made 7 appearances in AAA before being placed on the DL again with a shoulder injury. The Reds then released Pryor, and he announced his retirement from baseball later that year. Pryor's story is a very unfortunate one that shows the struggles pitchers have always faced, especially in the modern age. And it's interesting in the fact that we can wonder if things would be different if Pryor started even 10 years later. Starting pitchers pitch way less now than they did even 10 years ago, and a big part of that is analytics, but also the injury concerns stemming from overuse. Obviously, the more a pitcher throws, the more susceptible they are to injuries. But with hard throwers such as Mark Pryor, the effect it has on the arm is even worse. A study in 2013 found that 13% of minor leaguers had Tommy John surgery, and by 2018, it had risen to 19%. And given the rise in velocity and even usage before they became professionals, it's not surprising. But in Pryor's case, there's a lot of things to point at and what caused his problems. Many will point at Dusty Baker and the Cubs management/ownership for overusing him, which doesn't help, but you have to wonder if, just like his teammate Kerry Wood, injuries were inevitable. Despite Pryor having great mechanics, many will point at what is known as the inverted W, seen here, where Pryor's elbows are above his shoulders. Pitchers who've had arm problems, such as Steven Strasburg and Pryor, are poster childs for this motion that, according to doctors like myself, can cause an incredible amount of stress on the shoulder and elbow. But in Pryor's case, a lot can be blamed on bad luck that further damaged his arm. Mark Pryor is a great representation of how cursed the Cubs are in this time. The 2 biggest injuries he sustained came as a result of a play on the base pass and a line drive comebacker that just happened to hit his right elbow. Add in the fact that Pryor was on the mound when the Steve Bartman play happened, it seemed as if the curse of the Billy Goat was within him. And going back to his overuse, Pryor himself said Baker wasn't to blame for what happened to him. In a sense, Dusty Baker comes in second as the scapegoat behind Steve Bartman within the whole ordeal. Pryor said he never asked to come out of the game, and there's pressure from the ownership and the faults of pitching coach Larry Rothschild in the equation that can't be entirely blamed on Baker, though I still feel he left his team out to die in that inning. You can say without those 2 freak injuries, Pryor would have had a much longer career. Just like Kerry Wood, and seemingly every modern pitcher, arm injuries seem to be inevitable for Pryor. But even a pitcher like Steven Strasburg or Jacob deGrom, who've dealt with arm problems, haven't also dealt with problems resulting from a collision or getting hit by a 117-mile-per-hour line drive right on the elbow. Pryor possessed the talent to become a Hall of Fame pitcher, but a series of unfortunate events left him with just a 5-year major league career that he says he has no regrets over. And as of 2020, he is the pitching coach for the Dodgers. And every time Dave Roberts makes a questionable move, you have to wonder if Pryor gets flashbacks to a prior time.